Have you ever watched someone so confident they believed they could cut anyone loose without consequences? They didn't know my single signature was the thread holding their entire empire from collapse. When they decided to trim the fat from the company, they had no idea they'd just severed their own main artery. This is the story of how one piece of paper, and the name attached to it, brought down a $355 million merger and taught them the most expensive lesson of their lives. My name is Elena Brooks, and for 14 years, I'd been the invisible backbone of Stratagem Dynamics' international operations. But on that crisp October evening, as champagne bubbles danced in crystal flutes and CEO Marcus Whitfield's voice boomed across the 42nd floor, I felt the first tremor of an earthquake nobody else could sense. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus raised his glass, his silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers like he'd just discovered the cure for mortality. To the most transformative merger in our company's history, $355 million that will catapult us into the Fortune 500. The Manhattan skyline glittered behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows, each light a witness to what would become the most spectacular corporate miscalculation I'd ever seen. Around me, my colleagues cheered, their faces flushed with the intoxication of imagined stock options and year-end bonuses. I sipped my champagne slowly, watching. That's when I first noticed him, Rick Dawson, our newly minted VP of Operational Optimization. He stood near Marcus like a shadow made flesh, his Tom Ford suit so sharp it could cut glass, his smile practiced to the millimeter. Everything about him screamed efficiency. From his military-precise haircut to the way he held his champagne glass at exactly the right angle for photographs. Rick here, Marcus continued, clapping him on the shoulder, is going to ensure we're lean enough to maximize this merger's potential. No more dead weight, no more redundancies, just pure, streamlined excellence. Dead weight. The phrase hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Rick's eyes swept the room with the calculating precision of a predator cataloging prey. When they landed on me, they paused, just for a heartbeat. And in that moment, I saw myself reflected in them. A middle-aged woman in a department most executives couldn't even properly define, holding a title they probably considered glorified paperwork. Senior Director of International Compliance. To them, I was overhead, a cost center, fat to be trimmed. We're going to cut the fat, Rick said, his first words to the assembled crowd. His voice was warm, honey poured over broken glass. Transform this organization into the kind of agile powerhouse our new partners expect. Some of you will be part of that journey. Some of you. He let the pause stretch, theatrical and threatening. We'll find better opportunities elsewhere. The room's energy shifted. Champagne suddenly tasted bitter. Conversations became forced. People started unconsciously stepping away from each other, as if unemployment might be contagious. I watched Rick work the room for the next hour, noting how he asked pointed questions about everyone's roles, their department's budgets, their value add to the organization. He had a tablet where he made quick notes after each interaction, fingers dancing across the screen like he was playing a video game where careers were the targets. When he finally approached me, I was ready. Elena Brooks. He read from his screen without looking up. International compliance, 14 years. He finally met my eyes. That's a long time to be doing the same thing. It's a long time to be doing it right, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. He smiled, the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. Compliance. Important. Sure. But in the new structure, we're looking at third-party solutions. More cost-effective, more modern. Modern, I repeated, tasting the word like wine about to turn. Of course. Nothing personal, he added, already moving past me. Just business optimization. As he walked away, typing something into his tablet, I felt a strange calm settle over me. He had no idea what he'd just marked for deletion. In his spreadsheet world of numbers and efficiencies, I was just another salary to eliminate, another office to empty. But I remembered what they'd all forgotten. That winter in 2013, when the company desperately needed someone with the right security clearance to file for international operating licenses under Regulation 43F. I remembered the legal documents where my name wasn't just typed in a signature box, but embedded into the very framework of our international operations. I finished my champagne, set the glass on a passing tray, and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere in his efficiency calculations, Rick had missed a crucial detail. Sometimes the fat you trim is actually the heart keeping everything alive. The party continued around me, but I was already gone, walking toward the elevator with the quiet certainty of someone who knew exactly how this story would end. They wanted to trim the fat. They were about to learn that some cuts bleed out. 3 days later, the internal message arrived at 8:47 a.m., surgical in its precision. Please report to conference room B317 at 9:00 a.m. Bring your company identification and access badges. B317. I almost laughed at the irony. 2 years ago, we'd thrown my work anniversary party in that room. 15 years of service, complete with grocery store sheet cake and awkward speeches about my invaluable contributions. Now it had transformed into what everyone whispered about in the break rooms, the termination chamber. I took my time walking there, memorizing details I'd ignored for years. The slightly crooked picture of the founding partners, the coffee stain on the carpet near the water cooler that looked like a question mark, the nervous glances from colleagues who avoided eye contact, as if job loss might be transmitted through direct sight. Rick was already waiting, flanked by Cheryl from HR, a woman who'd perfected the art of looking sympathetic while destroying lives, and a security guard who seemed embarrassed to be there. On the table, a manila folder, a cardboard box, and a bottle of water. The corporate last meal. "Elena, please sit," Rick said, gesturing to the chair across from him. He was reading from a script on his tablet, his voice as flat as a weather forecast. As part of Stratagem Dynamics' strategic restructuring initiative to optimize operational efficiency ahead of our merger, we're eliminating redundancies across all departments. Redundancies. 14 years, reduced to a redundancy. Your position has been identified as non-essential to our go-forward strategy, he continued, still reading. Effective immediately, your employment with Stratagem Dynamics is terminated. Cheryl will explain your severance package. He slid the folder across the table without looking up from his screen. Inside, 2 weeks severance, the legal minimum, and a non-disclosure agreement thicker than my original employment contract. Cheryl leaned forward with practiced concern. "I know this is difficult, Elena, but we need you to sign these documents today. The severance is contingent upon—" "I'll need time to review them," I interrupted, my voice surprisingly steady. Rick finally looked up, irritated by the deviation from script. "It's standard documentation. Nothing unusual." "Then you won't mind if I take my time with it." I pulled the folder toward me, noting how Rick's jaw tightened. 14 years of employment deserves at least 14 minutes of reading, don't you think? He glanced at his watch, a Rolex that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "You have until noon to clear your desk. Security will escort you." "How thorough," I said, standing. "Though I'm curious. Did anyone check what exactly you're eliminating when you marked my position as redundant?" "Your responsibilities will be absorbed by our new third-party compliance vendor," Rick replied, already dismissing me by returning to his tablet. "More efficient, less overhead." "Of course." I picked up the cardboard box, pre-assembled, I noticed, probably ordered in bulk for this week's carnage. "Just one question, Rick. Do you know what Regulation 43F is?" He didn't look up. "I don't micromanage regulatory minutia. That's what vendors are for." "Minutia," I repeated, savoring the word. "Right." The security guard, his badge said Tom, and he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, followed me to my office. 14 years collapsed into a single cardboard box, a few personal photos, my coffee mug with the faded, "world's okayest employee" joke, the stress ball shaped like Earth that I'd squeezed through countless international compliance crises, I left the folder of termination documents on my desk, unsigned. "Ma'am," Tom said quietly as I packed. "You need to sign those papers before you leave." "No," I said simply. "I don't." He shifted uncomfortably. They said a lot of things, Tom. They said I was invaluable. They said loyalty mattered. They said we were a family." I sealed the box with tape from my desk drawer, my former desk drawer. They say a lot of things. As we walked to the elevator, I passed the legal department. Through the glass doors, I could see files being boxed up, ready to hand over to whatever budget vendor Rick had selected to handle our international operations. They had no idea they were packing away a ticking time bomb. In the lobby, Tom looked genuinely sorry as he took my badges. "For what it's worth, ma'am, this is bullshit. You helped my daughter with her college recommendation letters last year. She got into Columbia because of you. Tell her congratulations from me," I said, adjusting the box in my arms. "And Tom, you might want to update your resume. This is just the beginning." Outside, Manhattan continued its relentless pulse, indifferent to the small tragedy of another corporate casualty. But as I stood on the sidewalk, holding my cardboard box of memories, I felt something Rick would never understand: the dangerous calm of someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't used in 2 years. My lawyer. "Jennifer, it's Elena Brooks. Remember that conversation we had about the 43F licensing structure? Yes, the one you said was a legal nuclear option. Well, I think it's time we discussed what happens when someone lights that fuse." Behind me, the Stratagem Dynamics tower reached toward the sky. All glass and steel and arrogance, they thought they were trimming fat. They had no idea they'd just cut into the bone. The memory hit me as I sat in Jennifer's law office, surrounded by leather-bound books that smelled of justice and expensive retainers. Outside, rain began to streak the windows, and I was transported back to another rainy day, November 2013, when everything had started. "Tell me again about the 43F licensing," Jennifer said, her pen poised over a legal pad. "Every detail." I closed my eyes, remembering. Back then, Stratagem Dynamics was desperate. The company had just won contracts to expand into 6 restricted international markets: Singapore, Switzerland, UAE, Germany, Australia, and Japan. But there was a catch: Regulation 43F, a post-financial crisis measure that required companies operating in these territories to have a designated compliance officer with Level 7 security clearance. Not just any clearance, it had to be someone who'd maintained that level for at least 5 continuous years. I was the only one, I told Jennifer, opening my eyes. The only employee who qualified. Marcus had let go of the others during the 2012 restructuring. I laughed bitterly at the parallel. Ironic, isn't it? Jennifer leaned forward. But surely they could have hired someone else. That's what makes this beautiful, I said, pulling out my phone to show her a photographed document I'd kept for years. They were under a time crunch. The contracts had penalty clauses. If they didn't establish operations within 90 days, they'd owe $50 million in breach fees. So they did something clever. Or what they thought was clever. I pointed to page 14 of the document, subsection 7B. Jennifer's eyes widened as she read. Instead of filing me as an employee compliance officer, they registered me as an independent compliance signature authority. It saved them $200,000 in international filing fees and cut the processing time from 90 days to 30. Marcus called it creative problem solving. But that means... Jennifer trailed off, her legal mind already racing ahead. That means the licenses aren't held by Stratagem Dynamics. They're held by me, personally, as an independent authority who happened to be contracted exclusively to them. The company has operating rights only as long as I maintain my signature authority on their behalf. Jennifer set down her pen. And when you were terminated? Check section 7B, paragraph 4. I said, upon termination of the relationship between the signature authority and the beneficiary organization, all rights revert to the signature authority pending reassignment. Reassignment requires, and this is the key part, mutual written consent. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the windows like an anxious heartbeat. Elena, Jennifer said slowly. Do they know this? I tried to tell them. 3 times, actually. I pulled out more documents, emails I'd sent to Marcus, to legal, even to Rick during his first week. Subject line, critical compliance structure review needed. They never opened them. I know because I used read receipts. Jennifer was scanning through the papers now, her expression shifting from professional interest to something approaching awe. This isn't just about operating licenses. According to these documents, all their international contracts reference this specific compliance structure, their banking relationships, their vendor agreements, their merger documentation. All built on the foundation of my signature authority. I finished. A signature authority that ceased to exist the moment they terminated me without securing a proper transition. She looked up. When does this take effect? The system runs on Greenwich Mean Time, I said, checking my watch. I was terminated at 9 a.m. Eastern, that's 2 p.m. GMT. The automatic compliance verification runs at midnight GMT, so in approximately, I calculated, 7 hours, every international system that pings our compliance verification will get a null response. And you're under no obligation to sign the transition documents. None whatsoever. In fact, their own termination terms explicitly state that I'm prohibited from conducting any business on behalf of Stratagem Dynamics after separation. They literally forbade me from helping them, even if I wanted to. Jennifer stood and walked to her window, watching the rain wash over Manhattan. Do you understand what's going to happen? This isn't just about losing some international contracts. If what you're showing me is accurate, they'll lose their entire international presence. The merger will collapse. There could be lawsuits, regulatory investigations. I know, I said quietly. I've had 14 years to think about it. Every time they passed me over for promotion, every time they told me compliance was a cost center, not a profit center, every time they hired another VP of something or other while keeping my salary frozen since 2018. And now they're trimming the fat, Jennifer murmured. Now they're trimming the fat. I agreed. Except they don't realize the fat they're trimming is actually the foundation holding up their house of cards. Jennifer turned back to me. What do you want to do? I thought about Rick's dismissive voice, about being called redundant, about the cardboard box sitting in my apartment with 14 years of my life inside it. Nothing, I said. I want to do absolutely nothing. Let the system run its course. After all, I'm prohibited from conducting business on their behalf. I'm just following their termination guidelines to the letter. Jennifer smiled, the kind of smile lawyers get when they see checkmate 6 moves ahead. You know they'll come begging. Oh, I'm counting on it, I said, standing to leave. But by then, the damage will be done. You can't unring a bell, and you can't uncollapse a merger. As I left her office, my phone was already buzzing with a text from Cheryl in HR about the unsigned documents. I deleted it without reading. In 6 hours and 43 minutes, they'd understand that some positions aren't redundant, they're load-bearing walls, and when you knock them down, everything collapses. The rain continued to fall, washing the city clean. Tomorrow, it would wash away a $355 million merger, too. At 11:47 p.m. GMT, I sat in my Brooklyn apartment with a glass of wine and my laptop, watching the countdown like it was New Year's Eve, except instead of fireworks, I was about to witness a corporate explosion in slow motion. My phone had been buzzing increasingly frantically since 5 p.m. 17 calls from Cheryl in HR, 9 from someone in legal, even one from Marcus's personal assistant. All about those unsigned termination documents, specifically the single line I'd refused to sign. Employee confirms transfer of all compliance authorities and responsibilities to Stratagem Dynamics Corporation. One line, 23 words, worth $355 million. At 11:58 p.m., I pulled up the compliance monitoring dashboard. Yes, they'd never revoked my access. Another oversight in Rick's efficiency crusade. The screen showed a world map dotted with green lights. Singapore, Zurich, Dubai, Berlin, Sydney, Tokyo. Each light represented an active compliance certificate, all tethered to my personal signature authority. 11:59 p.m. I took a sip of wine, a nice Bordeaux I'd been saving for a special occasion. This seemed to qualify. The clock ticked over to midnight GMT. For a moment, nothing happened. The green lights continued to pulse peacefully. Then, like dominoes falling in perfect sequence, they began to change. Singapore went first. Green to yellow, yellow to red. A warning message popped up. Signature authority verification failed. Access suspended. Zurich followed 3 seconds later. Then, Dubai, Berlin, Sydney, Tokyo. Within 45 seconds, the entire international operation map looked like it was bleeding out. Every territory flashing the same critical error. Invalid compliance signature. Operating license suspended. Please contact system administrator. My phone exploded with notifications. The first automated alert came from the Sydney office. It was already business hours there. Critical error, banking systems offline, cannot process transactions. Then Geneva. Warning. Trading platform access revoked. All positions frozen. Dubai. Urgent. Government portal access denied. Customs clearance suspended. I switched tabs to my email, watching the panic cascade in real time. The subject lines grew increasingly desperate. System error, need immediate resolution. Urgent, all international systems down. Emergency, complete operational failure. What the fuck is happening? That one was from Rick himself, professionalism apparently a casualty of crisis. At 12:17 a.m. GMT. My phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then listened. Elena, this is Marcus. There seems to be a technical difficulty with our international systems. I'm sure it's just a glitch, but we need you to. That is, could you please call back immediately? We need to verify some compliance signatures. Technical difficulty. Glitch. Even in crisis, he couldn't admit they'd made a mistake. By 12:30 a.m., the emails had evolved from confusion to panic to desperate bargaining. Elena, please disregard termination notice. Administrative error. Call immediately. Cheryl. Ms. Brooks, $50,000 consultation fee for one signature. Urgent response needed. Legal department. Name your price. Rick Dawson. I particularly enjoyed that last one. No punctuation, no formality, just raw desperation in all caps. At 1 a.m. GMT, I received a formal email from Morrison & Associates, the law firm representing Stratagem's merger partner. Ms. Brooks, we have been informed of a catastrophic compliance failure affecting our client's pending acquisition of Stratagem Dynamics. As the registered signature authority, you may be personally liable for damages resulting from this failure. Please contact us immediately to discuss resolution. Threats now. Interesting. I forwarded it to Jennifer with a single word. Adorable. By 2 Paris a.m. GMT, someone had finally done their homework. A new email arrived from Marcus himself, CCing the entire board of directors. Elena, I've just been informed of the full scope of our compliance structure situation. It appears there was a grave miscommunication regarding your separation from the company. The termination was not properly authorized and did not follow correct procedures. Please consider this email official notice that your termination is reversed, effective immediately. Your full salary and benefits are reinstated with a 40% increase. Additionally, we're prepared to offer a $500,000 retention bonus and the title of Executive Vice President of Global Compliance. This is time-sensitive. The merger committee meets in 6 hours. Marcus Whitfield, CEO, Stratagem Dynamics. I read it twice, savoring every word of desperation masked as generosity. Then I did something they didn't expect. I replied, Marcus, I cannot accept your offer as I am legally prohibited from conducting any business on behalf of Stratagem Dynamics. Per the termination agreement, your representative insisted I sign immediately. Section 3.7 explicitly states that terminated employees cannot engage in any activities that could be construed as representing the company's interests. I'm sure your new third-party compliance vendor will resolve this minor technical issue promptly. After all, as Rick explained, they're much more efficient. Best regards, Elena Brooks, former Senior Director of International Compliance. The beauty of malicious compliance using their own rules against them. My phone rang immediately, Marcus calling directly. I let it ring out, then texted back, per Section 4. 2 of the termination agreement. All communication must be in writing through official channels. At 3 a.m. GMT. I stood by my window, looking out at the city that never sleeps. Somewhere in Manhattan, in a boardroom on the 42nd floor, executives were scrambling to save a merger that was already dead. They just didn't know it yet. The greatest revenge isn't always about what you do. Sometimes it's about what you don't do. And tonight, by doing absolutely nothing, by following their rules to the letter, I'd pulled the one thread that unraveled everything. My wine glass was empty. The dashboard on my laptop showed nothing but red lights, like a heart monitor flatlining. And for the first time in 14 years, I felt completely, perfectly at peace. By 4 a.m. GMT, Stratagem Dynamics headquarters had transformed into a war zone. I knew this because someone, probably in their desperation, had forgotten to revoke my access to the security cameras. From my laptop, I watched the 42nd floor descend into beautiful chaos. The main conference room looked like a hurricane had hit it. Papers scattered across the mahogany table, laptops stationed every 2 feet, cables snaking across the floor like panicked serpents. Marcus stood at the center, his perfect silver hair now disheveled, tie abandoned, shirt sleeves rolled up like a general who just realized he was losing the war. "What do you mean we can't manually override?" he shouted at someone from IT. "Sir, the compliance verification is hard-coded into every international system." The tech lead explained, his voice cracking. "It's not a switch we can flip. Every transaction, every login, every database query, they all ping the compliance server first. Without valid signature authority, we're locked out of everything. Then create a new signature authority. We can't. It requires filing with 6 different international regulatory bodies. Minimum processing time is 90 days if we expedite. We don't have 90 hours, let alone 90 days. On another monitor, I watched the Sydney office. It was full business hours there, and the scene was equally chaotic. Employees stood in clusters, staring at locked screens. Someone had written, "System down, EST, repair, unknown," on a whiteboard. The local managing director was on 3 phones simultaneously, all of them presumably delivering bad news. Rick appeared on the main floor camera, and I almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the pristine Tom Ford suit. His shirt was untucked, his perfect hair mussed, and was that actual sweat on his forehead? He was screaming into his phone. "I don't care what the contract says, override it, find a loophole, find something." The legal department was even better. Through the camera, I could see them pulling law books off shelves, actual physical books, like they were looking for some ancient spell to undo what they'd done. Someone had written on their whiteboard, options. 1. Negotiate with EB. 2. Emergency injunction. 3. Force majeure. 4. Pray. I noticed they'd crossed out numbers 2 and 3. At 5:30 a.m. GMT, the situation escalated. The merger partners' legal team had arrived, 6 lawyers in identical black suits, moving through the lobby like pallbearers at a funeral. Which, I supposed, they were. My phone buzzed with a FaceTime request from Jennifer. I answered. "Elena, you need to see this," she said, barely containing her laughter. "Check the Bloomberg terminal." I pulled up the financial news site. The headline made me actually laugh out loud. Breaking. Stratagem Dynamics suffers catastrophic system failure. 318.55 million merger in jeopardy. The article was brutal. Sources inside Stratagem confirm that all international operations have been suspended due to what's being described as an unprecedented compliance crisis. Trading in company stock has been halted pending investigation. It gets better, Jennifer said. Check their stock price in pre-market. Down 47%. And the merger partner? Already released a statement. They're reassessing the viability of the acquisition in light of material adverse changes. By 6:20 a.m. GMT. Desperation had reached new heights. My email inbox was a masterpiece of corporate groveling. From the board chairman, Ms. Geetsey. Brooks, we are prepared to offer you a seat on the board of directors. From the CFO, Elena. Whatever they're offering, we'll double it. From Rick. I made a mistake. I'm prepared to resign if that's what it takes for you to come back. That last one made me pause. Rick Dawson, the efficiency expert, the fat trimmer, the man who'd called me redundant, offering to fall on his sword. I pulled up the security camera for his office. He was alone, slumped in his chair, staring at his monitor. On his screen, I could see he had my personnel file open. 14 years of performance reviews, all exceeds expectations. 14 years of solved problems, saved contracts, navigated regulations. He was finally reading what he should have read before. At 7 a.m. GMT, they tried a new tactic. My doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a courier holding an envelope marked "Urgent, Hand Deliver Only." I signed for it, opened it. Inside was a single check, $1 million. The memo line read, "Consulting fee for signature authority transfer. $1 million for one signature, for 23 words." I photographed the check and texted it to Jennifer with the message, "They're learning, but slowly." At 8 a.m. GMT, 3 a.m. in New York, Marcus himself appeared in the building's lobby on the security feed. He was getting into a car. And I knew exactly where he was going. He'd finally understood that emails and phone calls weren't going to work. He was coming to Brooklyn, but he was too late. The merger committee was meeting in 1 hour. Stock trading would resume in 2. The business news cycle was already running with the story. I could see the headlines updating in real time. Stratagem Dynamics loses international operating rights. Merger partner seeks emergency exit from $355 million deal. Single point of failure, how one signature collapsed a corporate giant. I closed my laptop, walked to my kitchen, and started making coffee. Good coffee, from the expensive beans I usually saved for weekends. Outside my window, the sun was rising over Brooklyn, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Somewhere across the river, an empire was burning, all because they'd tried to trim the fat without understanding what they were cutting. All because they'd valued efficiency over intelligence, cost-cutting over competence. My doorbell would ring soon. Marcus would stand there, probably offering me everything they had left. And I would let him make his offer, let him exhaust every number, every title, every desperate promise. Because the truth was, no amount would be enough. They hadn't just terminated an employee, they'd terminated trust, loyalty, and 14 years of dedication for the sake of a spreadsheet's bottom line. The coffee finished brewing, its aroma filling my apartment. Perfect timing. Through my window, I could see a black town car pulling up to my building. The real show was about to begin. Marcus stood at my door looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 10 hours. His usual commanding presence had crumbled into something desperate and hollow. Behind him stood 2 lawyers and, surprisingly, Rick Dawson himself, though Rick wouldn't meet my eyes. "Elena," Marcus began, his voice hoarse. "May we come in?" "I'm having coffee," I said simply, not moving from the doorway. "And I believe our business relationship was terminated yesterday morning." "Please," he said. And I'd never heard Marcus Whitfield say that word with such raw sincerity. "Just 5 minutes." I stepped aside, letting them file into my modest apartment. They looked absurdly out of place, their $1,000 shoes on my IKEA rug, their crisis-rumpled suits against my gallery wall of family photos. While they settled awkwardly in my living room, I kept my attention on my phone, watching the split screen I'd set up. Stratagem's boardroom on one side, where the merger committee was gathering, and a financial newsfeed on the other, where their stock price continued its death spiral. Elena, Marcus started again. We're prepared to offer. Stop, I interrupted, still looking at my phone. Before you embarrass yourself with numbers, let me show you something. I screen mirrored my phone to my TV. The boardroom appeared in high definition. The merger partners were leaving. They weren't even staying for the meeting. That's happening right now, I said calmly. Your $355 million deal just walked out the door. Marcus's face went gray. One of the lawyers immediately started typing frantically on his phone. Rick finally looked up, and his expression was something I'd never seen before. Complete defeat. But we can still salvage this, Marcus said desperately. If you sign the transfer now, we can tell them it was a technical glitch, a momentary system error. You mean lie? I asked, taking another sip of coffee. I mean, manage the narrative, he corrected, falling back on corporate speak, even in crisis. Like you managed the narrative when you called me redundant. Silence. The newsfeed updated. Breaking merger partner officially withdraws from Stratagem Dynamics acquisition, cites irreparable operational failures. Marcus's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his shoulders sagged. The board? They're calling an emergency vote. On what? Rick asked, speaking for the first time. My position, Marcus said quietly. And yours. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Then I remembered the cardboard box, the security escort, the phrase, trimming the fat. Elena. Rick suddenly stood, his carefully constructed corporate persona finally cracking. This is my fault. I didn't understand. I didn't look at what you actually did. I just saw numbers, departments, headcounts. I treated people like spreadsheet entries. Like fat to be trimmed, I offered. He flinched. Yes. And I was wrong. Catastrophically wrong. I'll resign. I'll take full responsibility. Public statement, everything. Just please, don't let the company die for my mistake. Your mistake? I set down my coffee cup with deliberate precision. Rick, you were just the knife. Marcus hired you. The board approved you. The entire leadership team stood there toasting champagne while you announced your plans to gut the company. This isn't your mistake. It's Stratagem's culture. My phone buzzed. Jennifer was calling. I answered on speaker. Elena, you need to see the Reuters feed, now. I switched feeds. The headline made Marcus gasp. Stratagem Dynamics faces regulatory investigation. 6 countries launch simultaneous probes into compliance fraud. Fraud? Marcus stood up so fast he knocked over one of my coffee table books. We didn't commit fraud. No, I agreed. You just operated in 6 countries without valid compliance authority for, I checked my watch, 8 hours and counting. Every transaction, every contract signed, every regulatory filing made during that time is technically invalid. One of the lawyers finally spoke. Ms. Brooks, the legal ramifications, the lawsuits alone could bankrupt the company. I finished. Yes, I imagine they could. The room fell silent except for the sound of phones buzzing with increasing urgency. Through my window, the morning sun climbed higher, indifferent to the corporate apocalypse unfolding in my living room. What do you want? Marcus asked finally, all pretense gone. What will it take? I stood, walked to my window, and looked out at Brooklyn, waking up to an ordinary Thursday. Ordinary for everyone except the men in my living room. I wanted 14 years of loyalty to mean something, I said without turning around. I wanted my expertise valued. I wanted to be seen as essential, not redundant. I wanted to be treated like a human being, not a line item. We can give you all of that, Marcus said quickly. Executive position, board seat, whatever you want. No, I said, turning to face them. You can't. Because that company, the one that would do those things, doesn't exist. You killed it the moment you decided efficiency mattered more than people. The newsfeed updated again. Stratagem Dynamics trading suspended indefinitely. Marcus's phone rang. He looked at it, then at me. It's the board. They're voting. Then you should probably answer that, I said. I believe you have a termination to attend. Don't worry, I'm sure they'll give you a cardboard box for your things. Very efficient. He answered the phone, walked to my hallway, and I heard his voice crack as he said, Yes, I understand. When he came back, he looked broken. I've been removed, effective immediately. He looked at Rick. You too. Rick nodded, unsurprised. They gathered themselves to leave, 3 men in wrinkled suits carrying the weight of a collapsed empire. At the door, Marcus turned one last time. Will you ever sign the transfer? I thought about it, really considered it for the first time. Maybe. When the company that emerges from this mess proves it's learned something, when it values its people over its profits, when it understands that some things aren't fat to be trimmed, they're the heart that keeps you alive. That could take years, he said. Then I guess you'd better get started. The emergency board meeting was being live-streamed to all employees. Someone had leaked the access link, and it had gone viral within the company. From my laptop, I watched the death of Rick Dawson's corporate career in real time. The boardroom was packed. Every member had flown in, some still in different time zones, participating virtually on the massive screens. At the center of the table sat Rick, looking like a man facing his own execution. Mr. Dawson, the board chairman began, his voice arctic. Can you explain how your operational optimization resulted in the complete collapse of our international operations and a failed $355 million merger? Rick straightened his tie, a nervous habit I'd noticed in our brief interactions. I was brought in to reduce redundancies and improve efficiency. By firing the one person whose signature literally held our international presence together, interrupted board member Sandra Walsh. Did you even read her personnel file? I reviewed the departmental cost analyses. That's not what I asked. Sandra pulled up a tablet. Elena Brooks. 14 years with the company. 0 compliance violations. She personally navigated the Brexit transition, saving us $47 million. She identified the Shanghai accounting fraud before it could damage our reputation. She holds 3 advanced certifications that fewer than 100 people worldwide possess. And you called her... What was the phrase? Redundant. Another board member supplied helpfully. Rick's composure finally cracked. I made an error in judgment. An error? The chairman laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mr. Dawson, do you know what our lawyers just told us? Every international transaction made in the past 10 hours is legally void. Our banking partners are freezing accounts. 6 governments are launching investigations. Our stock has lost 62% of its value. The lawsuits will start arriving by end of business today. Through the screen, I could see employees watching from their cubicles, some recording on their phones. This would be on social media within minutes. Furthermore, Sandra continued, we've discovered you ignored multiple warnings. 3 emails from Ms. Brooks herself about the compliance structure. A memo from legal raising concerns. Even your own assistant flagged her position as critical, do not eliminate. You overrode them all. I was focused on the numbers. The numbers? The chairman stood up. Let me give you some numbers. $355 million merger. Gone. Market cap loss. $2.8 billion. And counting. Estimated legal costs. $200 million minimum. Regulatory fines, potentially $500 million. The cost of rebuilding our international presence from scratch. Incalculable. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. And the cost of keeping Elena Brooks employed? $175,000 per year. Congratulations, Mr. Dawson. In your quest to save 0.001% of our operating budget, you've destroyed 70% of our company value. Rick's hands were shaking now. I'll fix this. I'll convince her to come back. She won't even take your calls, Sandra said. And why would she? You humiliated her. Had security escort her out like a criminal. Gave her a cardboard box for 14 years of service. The chairman pulled out a folder. I recognized it as the same type Rick had slid across the table to me just yesterday. Mr. Dawson, your employment with Stratagem Dynamics is terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. But I have a contract, which includes a gross negligence clause. The legal counsel interrupted. Destroying the company's entire international operation qualifies. Rick stood slowly, his perfect composure finally, completely shattered. This is a mistake. You hired me to make tough decisions. We hired you to optimize operations, not perform corporate suicide, the chairman said. Your personal items will be sent to you. Your access is revoked. Your final check will reflect the minimum severance required by law, 2 weeks. The irony was so perfect I almost applauded. The same severance he'd offered me. Oh, and Rick? Sandra added as security entered. That cardboard box you had ready for Ms. Brooks? We have one here with your name on it. We ordered them in bulk. Apparently, very efficient. The live stream followed Rick as he was escorted through the office. Every employee stood and watched. No one said a word. The silence was more damning than any shouting could have been. As he passed the compliance department, my former department, someone had taped a sign to the wall. Essential personnel only. The elevator doors closed on Rick Dawson, and spontaneous applause erupted across the office floor. Not celebration, more like the exhausted relief of survivors watching the person who'd steered them into an iceberg finally being thrown overboard. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom, the security guard who'd escorted me out. Just walked Dawson out. He asked for a few minutes to pack properly. I gave him the same time he gave you. None. Sometimes karma has a sense of humor. The board meeting continued. They were now discussing emergency measures, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. Someone proposed hiring me back at any cost necessary. She won't come back, Sandra said with certainty. Would you? After being treated like that? The best we can hope for is that she'll eventually sign the transfer to whoever we rebuild with. But that could take months. Years, even. Then what do we do? Someone asked. The chairman looked directly at the camera, knowing employees were watching. We learn, we rebuild, and we never ever forget that our people aren't fat to be trimmed. They're the bone, the muscle, the heart of this organization. One person, one redundant person, just brought us to our knees. Let that be a lesson worth $2.8 billion. The stream ended. I closed my laptop and sat in the sudden silence of my apartment. Outside, Brooklyn continued its normal Thursday rhythm. But in Manhattan, in a gleaming tower that had seemed so invincible, an empire lay in ruins. All because someone had decided to trim the fat. 6 months later, I sat on the deck of a rented cabin in Colorado, watching the sunrise paint the Rocky Mountains in shades of gold and amber. The air was crisp, thin, and clean. Nothing like the recycled atmosphere of the 42nd floor. My coffee steamed in the morning cold, and for the first time in 14 years, I had nowhere urgent to be. My phone, which I now kept on silent more often than not, showed an email from Jennifer. I opened it, already knowing what it would say. Elena, they've lost everything. Final update attached. The attachment was a Reuters article. Stratagem Dynamics files for Chapter 11, Bankruptcy Protection. I read it slowly, savoring each detail like fine wine. The company had hemorrhaged talent after the merger collapsed. Their best people, seeing the writing on the wall, had jumped ship. Competitors had circled like vultures, poaching clients and contracts. The regulatory fines had exceeded even the worst predictions, $750 million across 6 jurisdictions. The lawsuits from shareholders had delivered the final blow. But the most satisfying detail was buried in paragraph 7. The bankruptcy filing lists the loss of international operating licenses as the triggering event for the company's downfall. Court documents reveal that these licenses remain held by a former employee who has declined all offers to transfer them back. All offers. They had no idea how many there had been. The last one, delivered by courier just last week, had been for $10 million and a written apology from the entire board of directors. I'd framed the check, uncashed, and hung it in my cabin's bathroom. It made me smile every morning. Another email popped up, this one from an unexpected source, Tom, the security guard. Ms. Brooks, thought you'd want to know. They're auctioning off the office furniture today, that big mahogany conference table where they made all those efficiency decisions. Sold for $500, probably worth less than 1 hour of the consulting fees they could have paid you. I'm starting a new job next week, better company, one that actually values people. Thank you for the warning that day. You saved more than just yourself. I smiled, typing back a quick congratulation. Tom was one of hundreds who'd reached out over the months, employees who'd escaped the sinking ship in time, many thanking me for showing them what their company truly thought of loyalty. The sun climbed higher, warming my face. In the distance, an eagle circled, riding thermals with effortless grace. No spreadsheets up here, no efficiency metrics. Just the simple, essential reality of nature, where removing the wrong element really does cause everything to collapse. My phone buzzed once more. This time it was a LinkedIn notification. Rick Dawson had viewed my profile. He'd been doing that a lot lately, according to the app. He'd started his own consulting firm. I'd heard, specializing in, and this was rich, human capital preservation strategies. His tagline: "Your people are your foundation, not your fat." At least someone had learned something. I closed the laptop, done with the digital world for now. In my pocket was a business card from a small tech startup in Denver. They wanted someone to build their compliance infrastructure from scratch, someone who understood that regulations weren't just boxes to check, but foundations to build on. They'd offered equity, respect, and a promise no one would ever call me redundant. I might take them up on it, or I might not. For the first time in my professional life, I had the luxury of choosing. The Stratagem Dynamics licenses, they'd expire naturally in another 6 months. Untransferable, unredeemable, worthless. Just like the executives who deemed me the same. I raised my coffee mug to the mountains, toasting the view. To essential personnel, I said to no one in particular. And to the executives who learned too late what that really means. Behind me, through the cabin window, I could see the framed check from Stratagem, $10 million gathering dust in a bathroom, the most expensive piece of toilet art in Colorado. Some things, I'd learned, were worth more than money. Things like respect, recognition, the simple acknowledgement that every person in an organization matters. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't taking what they offer. It's letting them live with the consequences of what they threw away. I took another sip of coffee, perfect in its simplicity, and watched the world wake up. Somewhere in New York, lawyers were dividing up the corpse of Stratagem Dynamics, selling its bones to the highest bidder. Here in Colorado, I sat in peace, holding the one thing they needed but could never have again. The signature they'd dismissed as redundant. The fat they'd trimmed had been the heart all along. They just learned it too late. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate karma and catastrophic consequences. Where are you tuning in from today? I'd love to hear in the comments below, whether you're listening during your commute, at work, hopefully not planning any fat trimming, or just relaxing at home. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of revenge and redemption, and share your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed a company make a fatal mistake by undervaluing the wrong person? Let's discuss in the comments. In the RECE.